And of course, this is brought to you by the Prabha Khaitan Foundation. And Praneeth, over to you now for our little introduction and to welcome our special guests.
Thank you so much, Advaita. Well, good evening, everybody. I, Praneeth Babbar, as SAS Woman of Amritsar, welcome you all to a brand new session of Tête-à-tea, an initiative of the Prabha Khaitan Foundation on the YouTube page of Kahali. The late Dr. Prabha Khaitan was a trailblazer in her own right, born at a time when women were confined within the designated role of household works. Dr. Prabha Khaitan was a trailblazer in her own right, born at a time when women were confined within the designated role of household works. Dr. Khaitan was a revolutionary character, much ahead of her time. She was a philanthropist, author, poet, entrepreneur, and a campaigner of women's causes, a relentless champion for women's welfare, childcare issues, educational and cultural institutions, and promoter of Indian art and heritage. Dr. Khaitan had given shape to Prabha Khaitan Foundation as an organization dedicated to social and cultural welfare in the 1980s. Almost 4 decades later, the foundation has gone from strength to strength and has spread its wings to realize the mission which Dr. Khaitan had envisaged. We are present in about 40 cities in India and abroad, dedicatedly promoting Indian art, culture, literature, music, and highlight pertinent social causes through all our endeavors. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation's anthem, which was just played at the beginning of the session, portrays the true spirit of Indian philosophy, unity in diversity. Here, the poetic genius of Rabindranath Tagore flows into the folk music of Rajasthan, Dadra, fuses with Kajri. True to the spirit of the foundation, we promote local artisans when it's time to show appreciation to our patrons and guests by endorsing their products. We encourage all to buy local products to help craftsmen in their sustainability and development. At the Prabha Khaitan Foundation's physical events, local food is served to soak in the smell and flavor of the place. To create awareness in the community, we uphold one pressing social issue every month. We use artist Sudipta Kundu's poignant paintings to reach out to our audience and patrons on social media, and through our invitations, try to create mindfulness amongst them. This endeavor is appropriately named Cause of the Month. This December, we are endorsing human rights. Follow us on our social media platforms to know more on this. Out of the Foundation's several initiatives, at Tête-à-tea sessions, personalities from varied walks of life come on board and speak on a particular subject. It is a freewheeling conversation where the audience gets to experience the guest's view on a particular subject. Today we have with us Ms. Pallavi Ghosh and Ms. Priya Sahgal. Pallavi is the senior editor politics at CNN News 18. She has covered politics and parliament for 15 years and has reported extensively on the Congress UPA 1 and UPA 2 and has now included the Finance Ministry and Niti Aayog in her reportage. She has also exclusively interviewed Narendra Modi, Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, and Priyanka Gandhi Vadra. Priya Sahgal has been a political journalist for 3 decades. She is the senior executive editor of NewsX ITV network and author of The Contenders that profile 16 Gen X leaders in the age of Modi, such as Rahul Gandhi, Akhilesh Yadav, Yogi Adityanath, Arvind Kejriwal, etc. She is also a columnist at the Sunday Guardian. In conversation with them is Ms. Advaita Kala. Advaita is an Indian author, screenwriter, and columnist. She has written screenplays for films such as the romantic drama Anjana Anjani and thriller Kahani. Apart from writing for films, Kala has also written 2 novels, Almost Single and Almost There. During COVID-19 outbreak in India, she ran community kitchen by the name Janta Rasoi in Gurugram. Today's session is presented by Shree Cements Limited. Now I request the audience to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's conversation.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And let's just dive right into it. Of course, Pallavi Ghosh, award-winning journalist, just won the CNN Political Journalist of the Year award. So congratulations. Of course, she's covered all the people that Praneeth named, as well as focused on the PMO, which is always a place of wonder and mystery for most of us. So we'll definitely ask her questions about that. And Priya Sahgal, of course, we all know her very well. I think I particularly, Cool Breeze is the name of her column in the Sunday Guardian, which has the inside track of what's happening in the power corridors. And, I mean, she gets the news a lot of times before the news channels do. So
Thank
I
you.
think so. And of course, her book, The Contenders. It's a delight to have you both join us. Pallavi is, of course, in Varanasi and following the Prime Minister's campaign. But let's start from the beginning. What inspired the two of you to get into journalism? And in particular, political journalism, especially, of course, it's a lot better now, but you've been in the field for 15 years, 20 years, spent a fair amount of time there, where it wasn't that common to see women on the political beat, and most politicians were men. So over to you, Pallavi, and then Priya.
Most politicians are still men. I mean, there are very few women, though the number has increased. First of all, thank you very much for having me this. And, Priya and I have actually worked together and we go back a long, long way. And actually, Priya was someone we looked up to because she's definitely one of the best political journalists around. And I used to watch her getting all this gupshup and all. So I think that's where that interest also began. I mean, if you remember, Priya, I used to do what was called back of the book journalism, which means in a magazine, the last few pages are left for those so-called soft stories. So I began with health, education, entertainment, and all of that. And then, I used to watch them and I used to it's a kida doing a political journalism. It's exciting. It's like a play you do, you act in comparison to acting in a movie. Instant reaction you get in a response from the people, and I think political reportage does give that kind of a thrill. And I mean, it's been years. Lots have changed. There are moments when I feel that, oh my God, why am I doing it? Especially when you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, take an early morning flight. And then you think this is something I really don't want to do. But then, the thrill of it, elections, like I'm in the midst of elections and, it's so exciting. I think that's the thrill. So I think I began by wanting to be a lawyer. So I went into a law faculty. I found it so boring. And I flunked also the first semester. So I remember that was terrible. So, I'm a Bengali, okay? So my mother would tell me, okay, if nothing else, become a teacher. That's the most safest thing to do. So that's why she made me do law. And then I became a journalist. And then I worked with Sunday, as I told you. I used to work with First City, which was a coffee table magazine. Then I joined Sunday. And I used to watch Veer. I used to watch Priya. And there was Anuja also. I remember another friend. So I used to watch them. It was very exciting. So I started going to Netas, doing soft stories. And then that Kira hits you. So I think it just happened. I just went on and on and on, moved on to TV. And then they give you beats. And my beats were all political beats. Actually, I started with a Hindi channel. And they thought that I should cover the Gandhis because Gandhis can't speak Hindi. I can speak English, so I'll connect with them. It was very warped logic, but that's the reason how I actually started covering the Congress party. And my beat was Rahul Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi karna, Varun Gandhi karna. इनको ना हिंदी विंदी आती नहीं है. Varun of course is an exception. So तुम ना you're an English speaking person, so you know how to do it. So I started following them, and then that's where I became a political reporter.
What about you, Priya? I mean, I know you went to boarding school, all girls school. We share that in common, and very protected world. No contact with politics, nothing. So how did you dive into the big bad world of political reportage?
Actually, it's very interesting. But before I tell you that story, thank you, Advaita, for your kind words, and Pallavi. I remember our initial days in Sunday Magazine, and I'm really, really impressed with the way Pallavi is carrying on. She is there on the ground, fighting, yelling, getting the news, and being there. Most of us have shifted to being studio anchors or whatever. Pallavi full marks to you. Really amazing work.
Thank you.
And I remember Sunday, we all began our journalism in Sunday Magazine. But Advaita, you talk about boarding school. It was actually the boarding school connection that got me, because I was actually applying to go to Oxford. Even I wanted to go into academics. Nobody that time. This was in the 90s, early 90s. I think I'm going to give away my age. But I just graduated from Stephens, and there, I first met Rahul Gandhi there. We ragged him also, by the way.
What?
And
See,
I have to know this. I have to know this story. What did you make him do?
we all owe our beginning with Rahul Gandhi. Does he even know
I
that?
know, because he was can you imagine, he was the best story of the, I think 2004 is when he debuted. But, there was that time Gandhis were the flavor of the season, political flavor, So Rahul definitely was there, very much a part of the situation. He came to college with his security guards, and everybody wanted to rag him, because then we would have boasting rights that, I ragged Rahul Gandhi.
Yeah.
So we were also there in the part of the crowd, and we made him, as every girl was saying, make him propose to me. So that was the main thing. And Rahul was such a sulku. He would say, practical things. How can I propose to you? I don't have a ring. So then somebody would give him a ring. Ring, lelo. Then he would say, but why? Then we would say, okay, he just hold the ring very, very like, I'd rather be anywhere but here, look on his face, which is still there, by the way. So he would then say, Acha, then somebody would say, Acha, but, you have to convince the girl that she should marry you. Then the girl would say, but why should I marry you? So he would look at her and, rude fellow, because I'm thinner than you. Which girl will marry you when you say I'm thinner than you? Horrible fellow. So anyway, so that was part of the boarding school thing. And I wanted to apply to Oxford. I got in, but that time we were applying for a scholarship. So I went for a scholarship, and one of the persons on the board, the interview, the Radhakrishnan interview, someone told me he's a DOSCO and he's asking very irritating questions. And I'm from Vellums, as you are, Advaita. So I said, we have the Vellums June Connect. So I went and I started fighting with him, it was literally like, and I just scuppered the whole interview.
Yeah.
But that person was very sweet, and he said, why don't you, you can try again next year, but meanwhile, why don't you, what do you want to do? So I said, maybe advertising or something. So he said, there's a magazine called Sunday. It's got a very nice guy, editor, Veer Sanghvi. Why don't you go apply there and whatever? I was not interested in politics at all. So like Pallavi, this is before you joined us, Pallavi, but I was doing the crime beat. So I was doing Charles Sobraj.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've interviewed him. I met up with Charles Sobraj, in fact, and we had, I did a lot of stories on him and crime beat, and that's when the Hawala scandal broke. That was in the Narasimha Rao's time, and Hawala scandal was targeting the politicians, which is my first political contact was Kamal Nath, really, because, and again with him also I used the Doon Vellums line. So boarding school has helped really in that sense. But it's been fun, as Pallavi has really said it all. It gives you a huge high to be there. You're there with people. You're seeing history being made in front of you. We've spent all our evenings at the party offices. I had more friends in the Congress headquarters, because I also covered the Congress like Pallavi. Then my own friends. It was such a high just going there and meeting people. And as a young kid, it took a while to get the balance, but it's been a fun ride.
But how they say, like on the outside, that politics is really dirty, and being women and going out there and hanging out with these in this really macho world, and sometimes with a lot of toxic masculinity also going on. How did you handle that? Like, I'm sure there were instances where you may not have felt comfortable, and if it had been a male colleague instead of you, they may have had an easier ride. So how often do those instances happen? Have you seen a change in this field when it comes to how they treat women? Pallavi, starting with you, since you've done as well as now you're still on the ground.
Yes.
So the thing is that as far as working in the newsroom, I've been lucky that I've never been told, don't go for this assignment because you're a woman. Barring, I remember one channel I worked for, which was Aaj Tak, and it was Bihar elections, and very fairly so. It was a very violent election, and they told me, tum Nalanda chali jao, because wahan pe to kuch hone wala hai nahi. It's a very safe place and all that, and you spend 10 days. Unfortunately for my office, just next to Nalanda is Mokama, and that's where firing broke out. And I was on a scooter and going there and shooting and all was taking place. So after that, no one ever told me that, and I created a huge shindy when I came back. ये क्या होता है? महिला है तो हम लोग नहीं कर सकते and all that. I've never faced that problem in the newsroom, but outside, well, it's been mixed. You know what I often hear, and which still bothers me, if you get a good story. And if you get a good interview, and especially with a male politician, they will tell you, "Dekho, mahila hai na, isliye they have given her that interview, or they've given her that story."
Yeah.
If you don't get it, they'll say she's dumb. She's a woman. She doesn't even have that. And unfortunately, I think the worst part really is, as I said, it's not in the newsroom. It's not so much the netas always. It's my peer group. It's the other journalists, and especially the male journalists. And I see that condescending attitude. I was watching your legal part, what Neha was facing in the courtroom, and how they look down like a pretty woman. I'm not even that pretty, but I'm not even comparing myself there. But the point is that she's a woman. She must be using her so-called assets. And that's how she gets a story. That's how she gets an interview. And I remember once I got a Chidambaram interview, which he was not giving to anyone else at that point of time. But it was not because I was good. It was that I was the only English-speaking journalist at that point of time in front of him. So because of the comfort of the language, he gave it to me. So I could hear those male colleagues of mine from the other channels, and I heard it. And that hurts me. And those words sting me. They said, she must have slept with him, or she must have promised him this. So, those kind of words do come back to hurt you. Not in the newsroom, not so many of the netas. I think those times have gone. I think even slowly gone. I mean, there are still netas who do accept the fact that, okay, women are journalists first. They are doing their job. They are professional. So let's not look at them as a gender thing. Yes, that is one problem I definitely face. And sometimes I'm told, you have to dress appropriately. Ab skirt pen ke chali jana interview lene. That kind of stuff. They'll not take you seriously. Don't go inside the party headquarters wearing, a dress or wearing a skirt, because फिर तुमसे ना वैसे बात नहीं करेंगे. They'll not give you information. The only roadblock sometimes I face is, some netas do want to talk to you off record late into the night. Sometimes the males do have an advantage. They share a drink with them so they can open up. I can't do that yet. I mean, if I don't know how many of the male netas will be comfortable if I go to meet them and say, okay, fine, I'm going to have a drink with you. रात को 10 बजे आती हूँ, मैं drink करती हूँ, मुझे खबर भी दे देना. That's my problem. Yeah.
No, that's so true. I think it's very, very limiting, no doubt. And you're right. I mean, the journalist fraternity can be very sort of judgmental of each other. I've never seen a fraternity go at each other in the way I've seen journalists go at each other. My trade is hoteliering, and we're a different kettle of fish. Because if, for example, if I go to another hotelier who's a friend of mine or something, and I go to their restaurant, more often than not, I'll get a discount. I'll get a great welcome, and all of that. We have that fraternity. But whatever my limited contact with journalists, what you say about this sort of conflict, maybe because Priya, it's a really competitive field, and the landscape has changed so dramatically. I mean, now journalists are celebrities in a way that they probably were not when you were starting out. I mean, we didn't know the DD news anchors, but that was the extent of what we knew of journalists. But today, I mean, you all are recognized. I'm sure you go to places, people know exactly who you are. They like you, they don't like you, they kind of, approach you. So do you think that's one reason why the field is so competitive?
No, totally. In fact, earlier on, and also television has done that to you. I spent a decade in India Today, 10 years, and I wrote so many cover stories. No one was, knowing me, noticing me, stopping me, or this thing. Now, with once I've come on television, last 7-8 years, there is a lot of, face recall value. So that goes with the territory of being on TV, I think, more than the print and TV argument. And of course, now there's social media. So that's making us all more visible and really in your face. But so in fact, I was given this advice very early in my career by that instead of socializing with your colleagues and peers, because the press club is really the most vicious place.
Terrible.
Pallavi would agree. that's where, so just instead of socializing with them, go directly to your source, to the politician or the neta, and socialize with them and cultivate them instead of, press club में क्या होता है, रोज रात को सरकारें बनती हैं और गिरती हैं. Everybody is saying मैं इसको वो कल वो करने वाला है, मैंने इससे बात कर ली है, कल वो टॉपल करेगा, राहुल गांधी जा रहा है, ये आ रहा है, on Amit Shah and Modi have had a fight, but it's all drink is done and कल सुबह योगी बन रहा था प्राइम मिनिस्टर और कुछ शाम तक सब खत्म हो जाता है. So that's the whole press club. So he's saying, which is good advice, that don't really socialize, go straight to the sources. It was Veer, in fact, who said
I knew it, I guessed it.
Pallavi and I have worked with Veer Sangvi and Aditi Fadnes. So that was the other thing. Sunday as an environment, Advaita, it was amazing place to work in. We were all this thing that had happened to Pallavi has happened outside Sunday, not in Sunday magazine. There, people, no one will take you to a sources. As a junior, I would not take them to a senior person. It was, Aditi who took me to meet Chidambaram, Veer Sangvi who took me to meet Kamalnath. These other people, they nurtured us and they took us to meet their sources, which has not happened. I don't see that happening in any other business environment, really. Work environment, even in any vertical of the media. So that's something that we learned from Sunday magazine as to how to, and like when Pallavi said, I want to stop back of the book and do politics. Yes, of course. And then with the Bengali, we said, okay, you go to Bengali guys. With me also, I was of course targeting all these the Congress politicians who were, a little bit public school led. And yes, there were passes. There were, but it's a language thing also. I think Pallavi hinted at it. I also felt that, little bit. So then I would in fact joke with some, I don't want to take his name, but the Congress leader known to be little hands-on and all. So I should tell him, you make your pass and let's finish it off. So then I will say no, reject you, and then we can talk about the real issue at hand. So after that, he just shut up. So, you be a little brazen and call it on their face. Ab Hindi mein ye nahi dekh sakte ho aap. It's one of those things. It was at the risk of, I know I'll be trolled for being elitist, but that's a fact. That was one of the issues.
Pallavi, have politicians changed over the years? Like the profile and the way they interact and their awareness levels or their commitment to public life? Have you seen any changes?
Yes and no. It's more mixed. The old ones are still around. The younger ones are on a different zone completely. Just what Priya was saying. For example, the younger ones are definitely more bindas. And by younger ones, across party lines, they are very savvy. They meet you. They're very clear. They want to give you khabar. They don't want to give you khabar. They want to give you interview. Nahi dena hai. Haan, thoda bahut dosti hai. We'll talk to you. We'll help you out. That's it. Otherwise, I actually haven't found them changing much. They're more or less the same. No, I don't think I find them. Level of commitment. If Parliament becomes a yardstick, then again, covering of Parliament for me hasn't changed. I saw the same hangama then also. I see the same hangama now only. Only thing is social media becomes more and more intrusive. The social media gives you that immediate traction. And you connect with many of these netas, through the social media. Twitter pe hi, hello, and take pot shots at each other. Of course, there are always trolls who are snooping and watching. Aaj hi maine ek dekha meme of me with Rahul Gandhi. Apparently I asked him this question about Ram and Ravan, kaun Hindu hai, kaun Hindutva hai, and he calls me a dalal. And that meme is doing the rounds now. 5 people have sent it to me. It's like that.
And they've actually sketched you pretty well. They've got the hairstyle and all right.
That was an interview I did with Rahul Gandhi, I remember. I had done an interview with him during the Gujarat election. Usi ko utha ke unhone kiya. Yeah.
That's the other thing, right? Politicians also, like Rahul Gandhi, since we're speaking of him, very recently said, dalali kyun kar rahe ho sarkaron ki. So, this was not something that you would expect to hear from, the Congress, because the Congress has always been perceived as being very comfy and cozy with the media, as opposed to the BJP, which has always had this, conflictorial relationship with the media. But now it's gotten to a point where politicians are they don't really like the media across the board.
Priya, I think.
No, I agree with I totally agree with this statement. It's I think media has been seen, for Rahul Gandhi to make this comment is really bizarre, because at the end of the day, the BJP started this. If you're not with us, then you're anti-national, you're a troll, you're a dalal, you're a piddi, or you're a whatever prostitute, whatever the words they come up with. The Congress has now jumped up late in the game, but they are equally vicious and equally bad. So if you criticize the Congress, then you are some, they'll be like what is happening with Pallavi right now. If you criticize the BJP, then you're abused even more. So at the end of the day, and that's for men and women. Only with women they have a lot more, leeway to get personal, get vicious, become,
Yeah.
Yeah, true, absolutely.
hassle us. So that's the whole problem, and the fact that either we don't, none of us really takes answers trolls, or you can joke about it and laugh about it like Pallavi is doing, but some level it's really, it's disgusting. It's not I would not want to encourage any of this nonsense by even laughing at it. It's just disgusting. That's what it is really at the end of the day. But they feel that they can silence the woman voice more stronger, more effectively than they can silence the men. So this is how it becomes. It's become personal, and I find that really funny, because I've seen this, even with the BJP, but at least in the, we remember in the old days we used to go and meet LK Advani. सबसे पहले he used to come with the clippings की file, and he used to say, पहले बताओ आपने ये लिखा था, ये लिखा था, ये लिखा था. So there were politicians like that, but there were politicians who were also cool. Like, the old school, most politicians, they know that
Yes.
you will be critical. The old school is not so sensitive. Today, even an Omar Abdullah, even a Rahul Gandhi, even, they just are the public school politician is very sensitive. Maybe it's a good thing. I am sensitive of what's written about me. So they also take these things very personally, which I find more in the younger generation than the older one. Older ones, barring one or two names, they were pretty, thick-skinned, and they knew this is part of the game. You will be critical today, tomorrow you will, and at the end of the day, the message is that criticism is issue-based. It's not personality-based. It's not party-based. I'm not pro-Congress or pro-BJP. I am not favoring one stand, or I'm not favoring another stand. In fact, the biggest dilemma that I have as a journalist, and I'm sure Pallavi has also, that do we take stands or not? That's a newsroom dilemma. MG Akbar was my editor, I remember, and he taught me, and I said something about Rahul Gandhi only. Sorry to bring him back again, but and I put a question mark. Is he ready? Question mark. So he's saying, hello, you're a journalist. You tell me he is ready or not. Why am I coming to you as why am I buying the magazine? So should you have that question mark in your writings? Should you let the reader decide, or should you decide? That's something I've not been able to solve, because if I take a stand, then I'm taking a stand. But isn't that my job, to listen to all the voices and bring across a comprehensive picture for my viewer or reader? But today the stand has become too in your face. You're too identified with one party. Even the people who are
Yeah.
taking a stand are not objective anymore. That's the problem.
No, that absolutely. I mean, there's no space for nuance anymore in public discourse, and everybody is constantly put through a purity test, whichever part of the aisle you fall on. So
Yeah.
there's just that common ground space has shrunk, but I think it'll be back, because that's how civilized society continues, when because of a common ground.
I hope
But
so.
yeah, but Pallavi, was you don't have to take names, but I mean, I know you all, both of you, between you have tons of anecdotes. Tell me about an interesting experience that you had while on the job.
Me, I have.
Yeah, there will be tons.
Let Priya answer that one, and while I think of something. I mean, there's been so many. Priya, can you think of anything? I mean, I don't know where to. Yeah,
Which one to
Priya,
begin
Better
with?
start.
Priya को पूछो पहले.
Thanks, Pallavi.
Okay, so, okay.
Okay.
Who have you? Okay, let me put these across this way. Who has been the kindest politician that you've interacted with? Who's come across as a kind, nice human being? Because they all have these personas that we see on TV and in speeches and all of that. But one-on-one, who have you been touched by their kindness?
Me?
I think, should I answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Vajpayee, I really liked him as a man, as a politician, and I liked his politics, and as a person. I had an occasion to interact with him a bit informally also. And his PMO was the best, Advaita, I have to say. I have not seen a more fun PMO. There was, in fact, that's part of my experience also. I would say that was the highest. He had these. It was more like a family run system. I think he was criticized for that also, but there was there was we had Ajay Bisaria, Ashok Tandon, we had Brajesh Mishra, who was really like the avuncular figure, and even the way he controlled all of them was very interesting. There were files that used to go up and down and with question marks, and we had these. Ajay Bisaria was from the MEA, so he was. And he's dealing with all these Sanghi people. I remember he had when he first joined, on his board, he had that glass paper, and he had the guys, the mugshots of all the cabinet in front of him. So he would at least see who is there and who is not, and which ministers come to meet this thing. So that was a fun place, and criticism, whatever we were. There were less journalists, not so many channels. So I remember there used to be these huge fights between Prabhu Chawla and Rajat Sharma as to who had more access. So I think one of them was allowed to take his phone inside the PMO, and his name was put up on the notice board, and the other one got really hassled and wrote, and there was, so there was, it was like a boarding school. I wish I'd taken notes because that was
really
fun. And that's when, you see politicians are just like us at the end of the day, एक आदमी का गलत नाम हो गया था, some wrong minister from the south was sworn in because the names were sounding alike. So there was a lot of fun happening, and there was a whole lot of and a lot of work. I mean, there were a lot of momentous decisions that happened. The bus to Lahore, I went there, I was part of that. That was another very interesting
I'm sure
encounter that took place. And I was there in Gujarat in 2002 when, in fact, the answer to my question that Vajpayee said to Prime Minister Modi, ke Raj Dharm ka palan karo. And then Vajpayee ji left on the plane, and I was left on the tarmac with Modi, who was the chief minister at that time. So it was one of those fun events.
Have you met Modi after that? Have you met Modi after that, Priya?
Full marks, Pallavi. I met him, and even I met him now, as in when he became Prime Minister, at the Diwali Milan at the party office. He remembers. He connects the name.
He remembers. He's got a fantastic memory,
which is amazing. Unlike some politicians again who met you a week ago and they will not remember your name. He remembers you from 10 years ago, and when I did not ask a very complimentary question to him. So in that sense, this people to people skills are amazing. I may disagree with his politics, but I've seen it. I've seen him interacting with everybody. He had a word to say to that entire hall full of journalists. I think he connected and made contacts with everyone. So on that level, and that's what a politician needs to do, really. Not just with journalists, with people. They have to have that people connect, which he has. So you can see why he's so popular. In that sense.
No, he remembers incidents. I remember. What was it that I had done? Okay, I remember that was a case of mistaken identity. What had happened, I remember he had come to Delhi University. He had gone to Hindu College or something like that, or SRCC. And the barricades lagaye hue the, and he was a chief minister. The NSUI had come there, and they were shoving around with those barricades. They were not letting anyone go in. So I just tweeted those pictures. So the next time he met me, I think, or he met Sanjay, he met my husband. So he's saying, and I was standing there. So he gave an interview to him, and he said, "Pallavi to mere saath aake khadi nahi hogi selfie ke liye, because like she's going to be worried about what the NSUI has to say." But it's amazing about him. Yeah. But I remember two quick incidents. One, of course, I always remember Pramod Mahajan for this, because I remember the Nanavati Commission report had just come out on the 1984 Sikh riots. And UPA was in power at that point of time. So everyone told me, and I remember I was in Aaj Tak, and Deepak Chaurasia told me, "Aaj na tum wapas to mati aana if you can't get me that report." So I said, okay, and I've been having a tough time with him because whatever. So I went there, I saw Ghulam Nabi Azad, Kamal Nath, all of them coming out. So I asked them for a copy of the report after they had been tabled. Both of them started asking, nahi, de sakte, ye hai, wo hai. So I said, okay, gayi, aaj meri naukri to gayi. So I was just turning around, someone tapped me on my shoulder, and I didn't even look up to see who it was. But the entire report was given to me, and it was given by Pramod Mahajan, who doesn't even know me. I never covered the BJP then. He didn't even know me, but he was just watching that interaction which I was having with Azad, and appealing and pleading ki mujhe ek copy de do, is a question of my job. And then I looked at him very gratefully, and he just patted me on my back, ki jao, phod do khabar. So, that's something I'll always remember him from. Arun Jaitley, whatever people may say, he's been fantastic. I remember once, again, he gave an interview to Navika when I was in the room, and legitimately it was my turn, but because she had a connect with him, she got it first. She goes out of the room, gets the interview, and he gave me this news that he's going to resign as a defense minister, and Nirmala is going to be the defense minister. And I broke that news. And then he said, I'm switching off my phone because अब तो नविका मुझे झगड़ा करेगी कि ये खबर आपने मुझे क्यों नहीं दिया. So he switched off the phone. I remember. So these are those little nuances which makes actually political journalism such a nice place to be in.
That's true.
I mean, this is interesting because, politicians do have their favorites, and it's natural because, it's a person to person thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes human beings also, so to break through those barriers, especially as young journalists, must have been really tough, to create those equations with people. And like you said, you had editors and seniors like Aditi and Veer who introduced you to their contacts. But when did you make your breakthrough? Like, who was the first politician who said, you know what, we have an equation and I can trust you and I can chat with you? And because that would have been significant, right? That would have been something.
Well, I mean, I began covering the Congress party when you really had stalwarts there. There was, everyone knows the name and they had a very good connect. And, Congress is both an easy party to cover and a difficult one because no one trusts no one over here. And there are many Congresses. There are different camps within the Congress. So if they find that you, तब तो Twitter नहीं होता था, but if you've done a story in favor of that one leader A, then वो B जो उसका opponent है, will stop talking to you because उन्होंने A के favor में किया. इसका मतलब you are belonging to the camp of A. So I still remember I had gone to 10 Janpath and actually I started covering Congress and politics when I joined Ajtak for the reason I told you, because I speak English. So I was sent to 10 Janpath and I remember everyone told me the person you really need to know is Ahmed Patel. I did not even know what Ahmed Patel looked like, because I just started covering the Congress party. Suddenly this man walks in and everyone rushes up to him and, sir, ye, wo, AP. And I was wondering, who's this AP? And then someone told me, ye Ahmed Patel ko hum log AP bulate hain and all that. So I was standing quietly and, I was very hesitant to even go and introduce myself because he was speaking to all the top people in the Congress beat and all. But I remember he gave me one khabar and he gave khabar to 2-3 of us and I understood what the nuance of the khabar was. So I broke that news. So he spoke to, who was my boss? I think it was Deepak Chaurasia only at that point of time and told him कि इसी ने समझा था खबर. उसके बाद when I met him the next time in Congress office, and I was just standing quietly taking a soundbite or something, he actually looked at me and said कि आपको वो खबर समझ में आया, but आपने मेरा नाम नहीं लिया, thank you very much. So I think that's when I started building up a connect. I think Neta will trust you when you don't play games with them. And second is when they tell you it's strictly off record, you have to maintain that source. What I see changing around me is a lot of young reporters in that hurry for that instant fame.
Yes.
They very often reveal their sources. They breach kind of a commitment they have made. But एक दिन का star हो गया ना, उसके बाद what happens? You can't go back to them. I think it's very, very important that you have to, you have to earn their trust. And if you've made a commitment to them, you have to keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the source is you have to respect that relationship. That's the only way trust can grow. And certainly, Priya, at this point of time, how easy is it to develop source-based news? Because a lot of people say that the BJP is very, very opaque. Congress, even today, the CWC will be leaked minute by minute as it's happening. Right?
Very often उनके leaders को ही नहीं पता होता क्या हो रहा है and we come to know.
Correct.
But the BJP, there will be a cabinet reshuffle and you'll find out like on the day it's happening.
No, it's true. It's very, very
different.
In fact, that's why you're saying cool breeze, but you see the diary item business is really stopped under this Modi era, because all the items we do, in fact, a lot of people call me and say, "Sirf Congress ke bare mein hi aap likh rahe ho." Because at the end of the day, that's where the khabar, you're saying CWC cabinet meetings were leaked. I remember a cabinet minister, he put his cell phone on so that a journalist could hear what is going on in the cabinet meeting. That had also happened during the UPA years. So that's very different now. Now, of course, nobody would have the guts. And in fact, news is broken to them the way it's broken to us, to all the ministers also. So today I can't, even if some minister tells me this khabar, I don't even know isko malum hai or he's just, giving me his own analysis and interpretation. Because very few people know what's happening in the BJP, really. That's something that Modi has changed, and he wants to tell the people directly. He doesn't want to use us. So that's the other message that is coming through in this government is that we all have to, reinvent ourselves and find new ways of communication. Because at best, what we can do is analyze. We can't preempt the news. the news about the cabinet reshuffle, even people who claim to be very close to Jaitley and the rest of it, like Pallavi saying, it's just one of the things that Jaitley gave her the news. Or no one was given the news, and if a favorite of a source is given the news, then that source is pulled up. That minister, whichever level, is pulled up by Modi for giving out news. That also happens. Journalists are now were being identified with certain. That this is Jaitley camp. Usko udhar se khabar mili hai. This one is from Amit Shah. I don't think anybody has Amit Shah, but whatever. Whichever
Yeah,
other
I don't
camp.
think he was
Wrong
a
example. Yeah. So basically, so people stopped giving news. Also, people who even had the news were scared. That's the fear of. God, fear of Modi. I think it's in today's BJP, they're one and the same thing, I guess, for them. So that's not there in the Congress. Congress is still pretty democratic, and I'm quite happy to see the fact that finally leaders are speaking up, because early on they were all off the record. अब तो वो on the record ही बोल रहे हैं उनके खिलाफ. Now they don't have to brief us. They themselves will tweet something. Today also we have Manish Tiwari and Harish Rawat tweeting something. So they don't need
Yeah.
me and Pallavi to say sources close to politician in Punjab, close to Amrinder Singh. Now they're saying what they're saying.
That's true.
So that's the
No,
difference.
I mean, but I'm reminded of what you both said about the older generation of politicians being a lot more like comfortable with criticism and things, because Harish Rawat, I mean, I'm from Uttarakhand, so I really track Uttarakhand. The media descended on him and said कि ये क्या कहा आपने ये वो, तो he said रुकिए अभी के लिए आनंद ले लीजिए. And he kept driving because he knows, like, the media lives for these moments, these kind of
Yeah.
breakups that happen, in these fissures that come out in the open. And Pallavi, and I want to get to the not so pleasant experiences that you've had while being on the job with politicians, facing arrogance or any of those situations. Of course, you can name, not name. I leave it to you. Have you had? I'm sure you've had those experiences, and how have they changed you? And has that kind of put you off a certain type of person or a politician?
Okay, my favorite Rahul Gandhi moment once again. So I remember I was actually at this hospital. My mother was there, and so I get a call at around 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening कि Rahul Gandhi कल गुवाहाटी जा रहे हैं, तुम interview करोगी? I said नेकी और पूछ. I'll do. So my office flew me down on a business class ticket because there were no tickets available. 40,000 का एक ticket था. Me and my cameraman, 80,000 we spent. We went to Guwahati. Phone call ही ना है. Whole night I'm awake. Why isn't he not calling up? None of the people are taking my calls. And Rahul Gandhi has reached Guwahati. The next afternoon also, they said, we'll get back to you. Finally, the next day at around 7, they told me it's not happening. I said, but why didn't you tell me? I just started crying. The whole night I cried and I cried and I cried, because what do I tell my bosses? 80,000 is not a small amount. And then I remember I told my boss that, I'm so sorry. What do I do? They said, okay, turn this into your advantage. Tomorrow you hold Rahul Gandhi up to the fact that he did not give you an interview and say that this was most unfair. So I tried doing that. I did that. So I managed to get his interview the next time around. But that, 24 to 48 hours, I think also taught me that, some things are just not meant to be. And also the way I was spoken to by some of the people in his team, or some of the people, who were in that Assam Congress and all of them, very rude, very brushing off. There are times when many of us, I'm sure it's happened to Priya also, you go for an interview, they don't like a question, they throw you out. And, or they're very obnoxious. The staff is obnoxious and condescending and all of that, and too many do's and don'ts and all that. I think, every time we have a glam factor in our job, because it's also high, frankly speaking, when sometimes someone recognizes you or, walks up to you and says, okay, I have some moments where people tell me, okay, young girls, we want to become a journalist like you, and ye wo karke they tell me. It's these moments which humble you, which get you rooted, because it makes you realize that none of you are really a star. At the end of the day, every day is a fight. To get a story, to get an interview, and there are always going to be people who think that you're not good enough. I mean, that's one way of reading it. So for me, it's always been a humbling experience, and I always think that, especially when all these young kids come to me in my office who have just started off with journalism and ask me, I said credibility is very important, that's one. And never be too happy with a story you've done, a good story you've done or something you've broken, because there may also be a next day when things are going to go horribly wrong. So I think that's been one thing I've learned about trying to be humble.
No, I totally get you. I'm not in politics or in journalism, and I've been spoken to in this kind of rude manner by some political operatives, and I hated it. I was just like, where does the arrogance come from? And I think it's a function of power, really. When people think that they can talk to people just any way they want because they're close to a seat of power or
Yeah.
whatever. It's actually
Yeah.
quite disgusting, and then you feel like, okay, fine, apna time aega. But Priya, what about you? I mean, have you had these experiences as well, or
Yeah, no, lots of what's also thing is, there are a lot of misunderstanding and people just take offense when none is was really intended. I've been doing a show with Dr. Subramanian Swami for 1 year. I was
Mm.
doing an interview with him every week. So I inherited a lot of his enemies, which included Arun Jaitley, which included Shashi Tharoor, Chidambaram. Uh,
Mm.
so couple of all that which was really not needed, and they were, I mean, I did not see a nice side of Jetli, Pallavi. I mean, you had a good experience with them. I've had a very
Yeah,
bad
I had
experience.
a
So,
yeah,
so
and
I
that's what
will,
I'm saying. There are people who've had a bad experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I was called a cheerleader, a cheer girl of Jaitley and Chidambara by Subramaniam Swami.
yeah,
And there's a
so
time
then
when he
Wow.
would not speak to me. So there are
Mm.
those moments, I guess. Yeah, I mean, someone is happy with you, someone is comfortable with you, some of them are not. So yeah,
and we're
I
not
do
really
know a
in
lot
that
of people.
fight. Yeah, we were not in that fight at all. I got trouble this thing because I was in India today, and Prabhu Chawla and Arun Jaitley had that huge fallout, and I was unfortunately covering the BJP at that point. So then
Mm.
it became one story was written, Prabhu would give a slant, this that. So there was that, and I became caught in that. Though Jaitley, to be fair to him, told me later. He says, "I know it's not you, it's him." That much he was pretty decent about. But so you get caught in this. For instance, Meher Tarar did an interview for Sunday Guardian, which is the sister concern of NewsX. And then I was
Mm.
asked, would you like to interview her? She wants to give an interview. And they chose a woman. So hence being a woman
Mm.
helps. I got that interview. I had never met her before. So we did the interview. And of course, she herself said, I want to talk about the culture of Pakistan, blah, blah, blah. But you can also ask me about Tharoor, but don't make it the first question. So sure enough, so I asked her. I mean, obviously, one is you're going to have Meher Tarar and not ask her. So I
Mm.
asked her, and sure enough, and until then, Shashi Tharoor and I had a pretty decent equation. As in, we used to do the odd interview and the whatever. He's a interviewer's delight. He's a,
Yeah.
we, we all seen him on social media. We heard him. He's excellent. And
Mm.
in fact, that is a regret because he totally misunderstood the whole concept. And she kept saying, and I think she wanted to clarify her point that nothing had happened between them. That's the point she wanted to make. And but of course he took umbrage at it, accused me of yellow journalism, blah blah blah. And I was like, hello, you missed the whole point, dude. Anyway. And secondly, it's not my task to either give him a clean chit or a this thing. She
Mm.
wanted to say her piece. It was an interview. I said sure enough, I was very happy to do it. It's a newsworthy piece. At that time the whole Sananda issue was hotting up. So yeah, that I regret because sometimes you are just misunderstood. Somebody else's politics are foisted on you. I rather have my own enemies than inherit somebody else's enemies. So
Yeah.
we all make our own mistakes anyway. We don't need to have. So that's the downside, which is not for a woman, man. It just happens to everybody, I guess. So that's something that I've really
Hmm.
seen. But if you ask
But
me,
is it? Mhm. Go ahead, Priya.
no, no, sorry. I was going to change the thing and say, if you ask me who's the most fun politician to cover, I was going to agree with Pallavi and say Pramod Mahajan. It was great fun to cover, work with him.
Really? How
Yeah,
come?
yeah.
I mean, what was it about his persona or his personality?
No, those days were fun. I think it was that whole Vajpayee era that was fun. People, and maybe that's the time we were also, we'd cut our teeth on the Narsim. I had at least on the Narsimha Rao era and the Gowda, which was just for 2 years. So that's when we'd kind of our contacts had come to, at an age. I was also at a midpoint in my career, so one could actually
Mm.
see and appreciate the events around us. So one was in that position, and there was a lot of tehzeeb, there was a lot of nuances, there was a press conference versus press conference kind of a situation. Politics was
Mm.
fun. There was opposition, which was a very smart opposition, or politics was not personal. It wasn't bitter the way it is today. It was, we had Pramod and the Vajpayee government. We had Vajpayee Advani fights also, turf wars, which were coming out in the
Mm.
public. But there was nothing. It was not never at a personal petty level. There was. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the difference. That's what I rue today. That it's no fun covering politics. It's become so nasty and so vicious. It wasn't that vicious at that time at all. So we had fun. I remember, if I wanted to remember one quote of his, which my favorite story about him is when he lost the Lok Sabha and then he was compensated by bringing him to the Rajya Sabha. And we were all at Najma Heptullah's house. She'd had a dinner or something. And she said, "Arey Pramod ji, welcome to Rajya Sabha." तो इसे नजमा जी ये क्या हुआ ना, ये तो ऐसे हुआ कि बीबी भाग गई और साली से शादी करनी पड़ी. So he's like, so those were the fun days of covering politics, getting the news, as you know. And we were at that time, you knew who broke the cover. Today you don't even know who broke the cover. Like, Pallavi got that report and she broke it. She can own that and people would know Pallavi ko wo khabar mili hai. Today, whenever we say ye khabar aayi hai, we'll say says who, and you don't even know who says it because it's already on social media. There's nobody owning up of cover. There's nothing great about the fun is going out of it.
I think that social media has just added to the venom. I mean, the Twitter world, it's just added to it. Anybody can say anything to you. There are those Congress trolls, there are those BJP trolls. They see a story of yours, then they will, they get personal. It's messy. Yeah.
I agree.
What do you think is the future of journalism? If you had a crystal ball, what do you see 10 years from now? Pallavi, you can start with
I was working, I remember I was working in the BBC and Tarun Tejpal had come for some interview there. And I remember he was just going to start his tehelka.com or something like that. And he told me, newspapers over, out. No one is going to read them. I said, oh my God, मुझे तो computer भी चलाना नहीं आता ढंग से. I said, oh God, don't tell me that's going to happen. Newspapers are there, the digital is there, the TV is there, radio is making a comeback. So we are all here. So if everyone who says that, it's all going to be over, I don't think it's going to be over. It's just going to change its form, its content. And we are all going to be around. I mean, you'll still find Priya doing those interviews, Cool Breeze bhi chalta hai, digital bhi karti hai, TV bhi karte hai, all of us. So we are trying to reinvent ourselves. We have to. I mean, someone who did not, frankly speaking, I did not even know how to use a computer. Now I've learned things like Skype and this StreamYard and Zoom, because that's what even lockdown taught us, frankly speaking.
Yes.
Working at home, lockdowns also taught us. And now, what we call the mojo, mobile television, journalism, going out. Now you don't need a cameraman with you often at times. You just have a phone with you and you do it. So that's also feeds into TV. So the form changes. The content is more or less the same. So we are all going to be around. You'll still see, hopefully, TV is still around.
No, I know as somebody who appears on TV shows, I remember like 6 years ago, there would be literally about 6 people who used to come home. The mic person, the sound person, the camera person, the wire person. And then slowly, I saw that shrinking. And before COVID, it was one person with a backpack wherein he had a light and a camera, and that was it. And now it's here, don't need anything. So I think it's in front of my own eyes in the last like 7-8 years, it's changed so much. And it's pretty incredible. What about you, Priya? I mean, what are you thinking? You saw the 90s and the early 2000s were huge for print media, like all those magazines, the explosion from the Vogue to the Harper's to the, all of them were coming into India. And then suddenly this slide.
Yes, and also, now everybody with a mobile phone is a journalist, So I agree, I saw on the screen somebody has suggested that now we should not focus on breaking news. I agree. It's now really, and I'm glad, because I see ourselves slowly going to an era of explanatory journalism, which is what I hope I do on my shows also. Because this breaking news is just being part of the noise, really. You got it first means what? At the end of the day, it's a great high. But I think now from the idea is who can explain it better, who can analyze it better. Do you get the right, how do you get the breaking news broken to the viewer or the reader, whatever. So now I think explanatory journalism is really, I'm going to see more and more of that. In fact, we see a lot of these YouTubers, they're coming, with their maps and graphics, they are breaking down news. So experts are coming in also, they're kind of pushing us aside, really. So every crisis you have someone explaining China, explaining Bitcoin, explaining crypto, everything. So there is, and everybody's making a small YouTube video and putting it up. So that's really going to be our challenge, is how to get those experts to come on my show and explain it nicely. And, kind of, now that I'm hoping that shouting akhada journalism ends. That's the other thing I have a huge problem with, but it's still going on. What
That's a
someone
good
calls
one.
them the Ravan channels, no, one talking head and 10 windows and 10 heads. So, I'm hoping
I mean,
that's
I'm taking that personally because I'm usually one of the heads in that window.
well, not meant to be personal, but yeah. So that's I'm really
Yeah.
hoping that that era finishes very fast. But I don't see that happening because it's really we call our shows dangal, we call them whatever.
Hmm.
Amne samne is a polite way, but there is all it's. I think people like that noise and
Akhada. There's a show called Akhada also.
akhada. Okay, so there it is. Akhada, amne samne. So that that's the I think.
Yeah.
Radha's going to kill me if I keep saying amne samne. But at the end of the day, I think we need to have more conversations, and I do hope we move towards that. But that's going to be a while before that happens because, as
Yeah.
Pallavi says, social media is just adding to the toxicity and this whole
Yeah.
and politics has become so bitter. I don't know which came first, but it's just become very bitter. So I think we're going to see more of those windows and less
I
of
mean,
the.
there's a question here, and I kind of feel the same way. Is that, and I want to ask you, as professional journalists who've been in the profession for so long, this COVID pyre coverage. What did you all think of it? When the New York Times big blow up photograph of it. I mean, I of course didn't like it at all, and I found it very distasteful and hurtful. But what do you all think of it from the perspective of journalism ethics, etc.?
Should I go first?
Yeah, sure. It's for both of you. The question is on the screen.
Yeah, no, I did not find it objectionable because this is what was happening. So to say that you're blaming the messenger here, saying that it's the liberal this thing, the West is turning the gaze onto us, this and that. You have to show the deaths and all. Yeah, maybe not such gruesome detail, but that is what was happening. That's where, and it was happening in the house next door. We've heard all the horror stories of how nobody could get an ambulance, nobody could take the body to the mortuary, the waiting, the pyres. This is what was happening. I think it has to be shown. Whether sometimes you have to show it was not being made up. It was something that was happening. So I think yes, I did not. I mean, I think it had to be done.
Okay, Pallavi, part of it was they didn't do this with their dead. They didn't show the burials. They didn't show the frozen trucks across the streets and all of that. So that was also one issue that came up.
I don't have a problem with deaths being reported or like hospitals में कमी हो रही थी oxygen cylinder. I think I agree with Priya on that. We needed to say that. That's the story. It's not a question only of India, abroad, everywhere. But for me, grief has always been a very, very personal thing. I'm not very comfortable with pyres, and it's not only about COVID times, but even when for example, which was the film star who died recently? Shehnaz wala Siddharth Shukla, right? The way, the way the cameras are focusing and someone had taken a mobile phone inside, I was very uncomfortable with that. That's something I really didn't want to see. And in the context of COVID, also, I know one channel, one reporter actually went in and she did a piece to camera from just next to the pyre which was being lit, and she was talking about the fact that देखो कितने bodies आ रहे हैं, कितना ये हो रहा है. I could have done the same thing. I could have spoken about deaths and people dying, but in a more different manner. You give people that space and that grief. My only discomfort is with actually pyres being lit and shown is actually with that. It's got nothing to do with a cover-up for government or cover-up for what was going wrong. But it's just that for me, grief is a very, very personal thing, and I would want to avoid doing that.
And point noted about breaking news. I remember last month only. Remember that Haryanvi wrestler who was shot, and all the channels.
Oh my God!
Every channel ran that on that ticker, and said that she's gone, she's dead.
अरे फोनो भी हो गया, lives भी हो गए, obits were also written in hurry.
And it was entirely someone else. So I mean, this sort of crazy rush also was. I mean, and we've gone over an hour, but it's so easy to talk to the two of you, and I hope we get to talk one-on-one in person sometime soon. I think on the other side of Omicron. Or Omicron, I don't know how is it.
And when you finish writing that story on Jackie, we'll all catch up.
Don't do breaking news right now.
I was mentioned with Jackie I was talking about.
That's true. But yeah, our industry works very differently. We are very quiet till things are ready. But thank you so much, both of you, for coming. And it's always a pleasure to chat with you. And I hope we can have you back again soon. And we get to meet off the record. Lots going on in the world. So thank you so
Thank
much.
Great fun. Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, and
My
having us
pleasure.
together, it was good fun to be chatting with
Yeah, it was
Pallavi
great
also.
fun.
Yes.